In this video, we're going to take the first part of a multi-part series, installing Hadoop with Cloudera Manager in AWS. In this particular video, we're going to set up the Amazon Web Services servers, and on subsequent videos, we'll install the Cloudera Manager and do all these other great things. On the required list, you definitely need to have been through the Hadoop approach video, as well as the HDFS and MapReduce videos. Also, you will need an Amazon Web Services account, or you'll need to have 3 to 6 servers of your own. It's also highly suggested that you go through the Infinite Skills AWS course. In this course, I've taken about 5 hours worth of instruction and crammed in a whole bunch of great stuff, including the EC2 servers that we'll spin up our services on. You don't need this, but it's highly suggested to go through this if you're not familiar with Amazon Web Services. Also suggest you take a look at the Cloudera Manager introduction and set aside about 30 to 60 minutes total to complete all parts of this lesson. Be aware, please, that there are going to be Amazon Web Services charges for this. The estimated charges should be under about 50 cents, but you'll be charged that amount for every partial hour that you work. So if you get in and you set up everything within about an hour, you'll only be charged about 33 cents, but for every subsequent hour that you keep it up, you will be charged an ongoing 33 cents. So please be very, very careful with that. If you don't expect that you can get through all 60 minutes of this lesson, you might want to reschedule some time when you think you can. Also, some very important stuff. This cluster setup is not an ideal cluster setup. Please be aware that if you stop and restart the AWS nodes, they will change IP addresses. You can get around this by using elastic IPs or virtual private cloud, both of which let you assign static IP addresses to your instances. So you could stop them and restart them, and the cluster will come back up with everything pointing to where it should be. Please do not use this cluster in production. This is just to help you understand the exercises and to see the actual functioning cluster. Now, there's another lesson in this course to set up the quote-unquote pseudo-distributed cluster on a VM, but this cluster alone will be the one in which you can actually go in and see more than 3 nodes working inside of a real cluster with master and slave roles. You don't have to do this setup. You could also do the VM setup, and you'd be able to run labs in there as well. This cluster, again, is going to incur 1 full hour's worth of charges every time you spin it up. So you may want to try to get through all the exercises that you can as soon as you spin this cluster up, and then you can poke around and see where the actual data is stored and processed. Also, if you spin it up, please be aware you'll be billed ahead for every partial hour. Again, these are AWS peculiarities, so we're not going to go into great detail inside of here. So let's go ahead and log into your AWS Management Console, and you're going to go to the EC2 tab. You should see a view similar to what I see right here. We're going to first launch our master instance. This is what's going to contain the HDFS name node and the MapReduce job tracker. And let's scroll down and choose Ubuntu Server 12.04. This video was recorded right before 14.04 came out, so if you see 14.04, this video should work equally well with that distribution as well. We're going to click an M1 large, and we're going to configure the instance details. You can, again, launch into VPC if you choose. We're just going to launch into Classic. We're going to choose 1 single instance. And for storage, let's give this machine 20 gigs of root storage. So you're going to want to change that from the default that was 8. We're going to tag the instance and call it Hadoop-master. And that will let us easily find it later on. And then here, we're going to create a new security group. And here, we're going to add a rule. You can see the SSH one is in there. We're going to allow all ports, so 0 through 65500. That should do it. And from anywhere. So select anywhere, and that should put in the CIDR block of all 0/0. Again, this is just to get a security group up and running. If you're configuring a cluster for real production use, you'll want to visit this page. You can see this Cloudera page right here lists all of the ports and the service and the component required for Cloudera Manager, as well as the supporting underlying Hadoop daemons and so forth. This is the page to visit if you need to go back in and actually open up specific ports if you have a real production cluster you're spinning up. Here we're just spinning up everything, so let's go ahead and name this. Let's give it one final name and call it Hadoop-master. And let's review and launch. You're going to see these warnings right here that Hadoop Master is open to the world. That's okay. And that we're going to be charged for this. We understand that as well. Let's go ahead and push launch. And we're going to create a new key pair as well. And let's call this key pair Hadoop key pair to make sure we can easily find it later. And don't put a .pem on the end. Make sure you just leave it like this and push download key pair. You want to make sure that you remember exactly where this key pair downloaded to. If you don't have this later on, when you try to access your instances, you won't be able to log into them. So take note of where that's stored and push launch instance. You should see this screen come up telling us what instances we have launched. Let's go ahead and create our slaves now as well. Go back to our EC2 dashboard. Click Launch Instance. Again, we're going to choose 1204 LTS, and we're going to this time choose an M1 small size. And we're going to configure the instance details. We want 4 of these. These are going to serve as our actual slave where our storage and processing happens. So we're going to leave those at 4, and we're going to add some storage to these. Again, we're going to change the default and put 20 gigs of storage on these. We're going to tag the instances with Hadoop-slave so we can easily find them later. And we're going to create a brand new security group and call this one Hadoop slave. And again, we're going to add a rule and add all these ports in here, opening everything up from anywhere. Again, in production, you would not do that. You would only pick the specific ports you need, and we're going to push launch. This time, we're going to choose an existing key pair. We've created a key pair before, so choose our Hadoop key pair. Click our button saying that we have this key pair, and we understand that we'll not be able to access our machines without it, and push launch instances. And if we go back to EC2, we should see a whole bunch of instances starting to pop up. Let's go in here and let's only pick the running instances and keep pushing refresh until we see all of our instances come up here. And we can start seeing our slaves come up as well. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 slaves and 1 master. So a quick note on those security groups as well. If you go down here and we look at our rules, again, we've opened the ports wide open. And the reason that I'm doing that in this lesson is to make sure that subsequent viewers of this lesson are going to get no problems on the ports. It's hard to say what ports Cloudera Manager will require later on. So rather than independently specifying each, I've just set up everything. We're also going to need to record the public DNS and the private IPs that are given to us for the master and the slaves. So one thing that we got to do is open up another tab in our browser, and please browse to this location, S3 Amazon AWS Learn Hadoop. And we're going to save this file, and I'm going to save it locally on my desktop. And then I'm going to open a text editor up. I use Emacs, and we can browse through this file. These are the instructions to actually set up our 4-node cluster. But the important part for us right now is to browse down to the part that says master pub DNS, and we're going to enter our master public DNS. So let's go ahead and grab that from right here, paste it in our file, and then we're going to grab the private IPs of all of our machines. And we're first going to get the master's private IP address, and we're going to put that in, tag it as being the master, and now let's go in and grab each of our slaves' DNS individually. So here's one slave. Again, the slaves are all peers, so the order doesn't really matter. And here's our second slave. Again, you're going to see different IP addresses, hopefully. It'd be a huge coincidence if you saw the same ones. And this is number 3 slave. And we just need to grab number 4 slave, and then we can continue on here. So make sure that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 IP addresses, and that each one is independent. And let's save our changes to this file and make sure that you've also copied the public DNS for the master as well. Great, so that's it for this part. Go ahead and flip over to the next video, and I will meet you over there.